Hello, everybody. Welcome to Storytime from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. The story we have for you today comes from Germany, and it's a story about a brave young girl who set out to find her missing brothers. This is the story of the 7 ravens. Once, long ago, there was a man and a woman, and they were very happy together. They had 7 sons. 7! And they were very happy with their 7 sons, but both of them very much wished that they could have a daughter. And they just, every time they had a baby, it was another boy, and they were very happy with their boys, but they really wanted to have a daughter. And so finally, they were very happy when the wife gave birth to a little girl. They were so excited, but the little girl was rather small and rather thin, and they were very worried that she was a little too weak and she wasn't going to survive. And so Father decided he needed to baptize the baby immediately so that she would be safe should she happen to not make it through the night. Well, he sent his sons on the run to the well to fetch the water so he could baptize the baby. But, as boys do often, they argued and tussled with each other on the way, and when they got to the well, every single one of them wanted to be the first to get the water out of the well for their baby sister. And in the scuffle that ensued, the pitcher fell into the well, and now the boys had no way to bring back the water for Father to baptize the baby. And nobody was really sure what to do. None of them wanted to go back to Father and make him very, very angry by saying that they had been arguing at the well and they had lost the pitcher. And so as they stood there for longer and longer trying to think what to do, back in the house, Father was getting a little bit frustrated. He said, "Oh, those silly youngsters, they're playing again and they've forgotten what I told them to do again. How many times must I tell them to keep their minds on their task? I wish they would all just be turned into ravens. Perhaps then they could obey." And as soon as he said it, there was a flurry and a rustle and the sound of feathers, and 7 coal-black ravens flew past the window of the house and settled on the roof for just a short time, and then they flew away. Well, the father could not take back his rash words, and he and the mother were very upset to have lost all 7 of their sons in just one day because of a silly thing that he had said. But there was nothing they could do about it, and so they consoled themselves with their little daughter, who soon grew stronger and more hardy and was able to grow up very well. But her parents did not want her to feel responsible for the loss of her brothers, and so they did not talk about them in front of her, and she grew up not knowing that she even had brothers. Until one day, as she was walking through the village, she overheard some villagers, and she realized they were talking about her. One of the villagers said to the other, "Well, yes, she is very beautiful, but I do not know. Something must have gone wrong there, for her brothers disappeared the same day she was born." Well, this was rather startling news. She did not know she had brothers. And so she went home and she asked her parents about this thing that she had heard in the town. They had said that she had brothers. Did she really have brothers? And then her parents could not keep the truth from her any longer. And so they told her the story of the day when she was born and how Father had sent the boys down to the well to get the water, and he had gotten frustrated because they did not come back quickly. And he had made a very rash statement, and her brothers had turned into ravens and flown away. But they made sure that she knew that it was not her fault that it had happened. Her birth just happened to be on the same day. It must have been the will of heaven that her 7 brothers be taken away from them. Well, the girl heard what her parents were saying, and they understood that she understood that they were telling her it was not her fault. But she still felt as though there must be something she could do to get her brothers back. And so she thought about it for a while, and after a while, it just got to the point where she just didn't feel right anymore. And so she decided she needed to do something about the fact that her brothers were missing. And so she decided to leave home and go off in search of her brothers. And when she did, she only took a few things with her. She took a little ring that belonged to her mother that her father had given her mother, and that would remind her of her parents as she traveled. She took a loaf of bread, she took a jug of water, and she took a little stool, for she knew when she got tired of walking, she was going to need to sit down and rest for a little while. And so off she went across the world, searching for her brothers, asking everywhere if anyone had seen 7 ravens that were her brothers. She followed people's directions for a while, and after a while, she just couldn't find anyone who could tell her where her brothers were. And so she continued to wander the world until finally she reached the very end of the earth. And there she was very close to the sun. But the sun was so hot that it was scorching her, and she didn't like it. And so she ran away, and she ran so far and so fast, in fact, that she ran right into the moon. Well, in the moon, it was quite cold and dismal. And then she heard it, a very odd voice that said, "I smell human flesh." Well, that was a bit frightening, and so she ran away again. And this time she ran straight to the stars. Now the stars were very kind and friendly, and they greeted her as she walked amongst them. They were all sitting on great, enormous chairs. But one of them, the morning star, stood up and said to her, "You are looking for your brothers, the 7 ravens, and you will not be able to get to them unless you have a key. I have one here, and I will give it you. Now open your handkerchief." And she pulled out her handkerchief and she opened it up. And the morning star laid the key in her handkerchief, and he said, "Now keep that carefully. Do not lose it." And she wrapped it up carefully and she put it back in her pocket. She said, "Please, I do not know where my brothers are. Could you please tell me?" And the morning star said, "Well, yes, they are in the iceberg, that way." And so the girl thanked the morning star very kindly, and she went on that way until she came to the iceberg. And sure enough, she could see a little ice door in the berg and a little place where the key should go. And so she pulled the handkerchief from her pocket, but when she opened it up, the key was gone. She had lost it. Oh dear. What can I do? She thought. Perhaps I can stick my finger in the keyhole, and if I wiggle it around enough, maybe I can unlock the door. And so she did. She took her little finger and she stuck it in the keyhole, and she wiggled it around, and oh, it hurt terribly. But after a little while, she heard a click, and the little ice door in the iceberg swung open, and in she went. She had just gone inside the door. She had just gone inside the door, and she had just gotten inside the iceberg, and the door swung shut behind her, when a little man came to greet her, and he said, "Good day, child, and what might you be doing here?" And she said, "Well, I am looking for my brothers, the 7 ravens." And the little man said, "The master's raven are not home now, but if you would like to wait for them, you may follow me and you can wait for them." And so she followed the little man down the passageway and into a big room with a table in the center, all laid with 7 plates and 7 cups. There was a lot of food on those plates and water in the cups, and she was very hungry and very thirsty, for she had long since finished her bread and her water. But she did not wish to eat all of her brother's food. And so she went to each plate and just took a little bit of food off of it and ate that, and a little sip of water out of the cup, so that none of her brothers would have to do without, but so that she would not be quite so hungry anymore. Well, as she was taking a sip from the very last cup, the little ring that she had been wearing on her finger to remind her of her parents slipped off and fell into the cup. Splash! Well, before she could reach into the cup to get it out again, she heard a whirring of wings, and the little man said, "The master's raven have returned." Well, the girl was suddenly a bit frightened. She wasn't certain how her brothers would take to her being there, and so she ran over and she hid herself behind the door. for suddenly she was feeling very shy. Well, into the room walked the 7 ravens, and they each went to their places at the table. And they sat, and they got ready to eat. And then one of them looked at his plate and said, "Someone has been eating off of my plate." And another said, "I believe someone's been eating off of mine as well." "And someone's been drinking out of my cup," said a third. "And then someone out of mine, and I believe it was someone with a human mouth." Well, just then, the eldest brother, who had drained his cup of water, felt something roll out of it and hit him on the beak. He shook his head, and the thing fell onto the table, and he said, "Look here, I recognize this ring. This was Mother's ring. Father gave it to her. Oh, how I wish our little sister were here. If she were only here, we could be freed from this spell." Well, when she heard that, the little girl was not going to stay behind the door. If all it took to get her brothers out of the spell was to be in the room, well, then she already was. And so she came out from behind the door and she greeted her brothers. And as soon as she greeted her brothers, suddenly standing there in front of her were not 7 ravens, but 7 very handsome and strong young men. And they all hugged each other greatly and kissed each other. And then they went home, where their parents hugged and kissed them all too. And they lived very, very happily together. And that is the story of the 7 ravens from Germany. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back and join us again on Friday at 3 p.m. Central Time, when we'll have another story for you here from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.